Welcome to Technical Question Tuesday. My name is Carrie Silverhorn, and this is brought to you by My Pocket Tech and GSTRV. Let me give you a little bit about myself. I'm a solo female traveler of 4 years and a certified RV technician and inspector. And so every Tuesday, I would like to go live for about 30 minutes and just answer your questions that you might have for a technician. And we'll pick topics of the week for the theme. This week's theme is batteries. We're going to be going over batteries. If your question isn't chosen tonight, don't worry about it because it's going to go into like a pot and it'll be there for next time. You can get professional answers on RV systems and maintenance and learn practical tips and tricks for RV safe and road ready and just have fun. So let's get started. So this question comes from Shelly in Indiana, and she wanted to know about trickle charging or charging her batteries. She seems to be low on power. Well, that is a very good question. So let me just explain to you a little bit about how batteries work. So you have a battery. There's 3 types of batteries, and those are going to be lead acid, AGM, and lithium. Okay. Lead acid batteries are the ones that you have to fill with distilled water. Those require maintenance. AGM is a gel medium inside. You don't open those up. They don't require as much maintenance on that one. And then lithiums are virtually maintenance free, right? So it also kind of follows suit on price point. Lead acid is a little cheaper. AGM is a little bit higher end. Lithiums, of course, are the higher end batteries, right? So with that being said, you have a certain amount of amp hours. And so you'll see on your battery that it'll say 100 amp hours AH, right? Now you're never going to get fully that 100 hours of that battery because you would run it completely down. And so it's kind of that 80-20 rule, right? So with that being said, you can double up the batteries and start adding more batteries so that you have more hours to run the battery. And so this is one of the ways that we do this. So I'm going to show you this right now. This is, you hook the batteries up in either series or parallel. Okay. Series is you're going to have say 6-volt batteries, and a lot of motorhomes have 6-volt batteries. And so you want to hook them up kind of diagonally, positive to negative, and positive to negative, positive to negative. And then you're creating each one of those that hooks together as basically a 12-volt battery. And it still has, if it's 100 amp hour or this application is 10 amp hours, you still have 10 amp hours, right? But if you do parallel, so if you had 2 12-volt batteries sitting side by side and you go basically an equal sign, negative to negative, positive to positive, you're going to still have 12 volts at the end of it, but you're going to double your amp hours. So if you have 100 hours, amp hours on there, so you're getting about 80. So you have 100 hours and 100 hours, then you end up with 200 hours on the output side of that. And that, roughly 80% of that is what you'll get, right? So let's just go over that real quick. So I have that down there for you so that you can take notes on that. So this is called series and parallel. And so you would want to stack these. And if you're going to be stacking them, like for lithium batteries, you want to just keep building a bank and just continuing to go, you would do this in parallel. So you have a 12-volt battery, and you need to keep on however many hours you need. Now, when we talk about power, that's kind of the thing that we chase as RVers. We chase the power. And so, your refrigerator that runs off of propane and is running like 2.5 amps, right? So a solar panel laid flat on your roof is probably producing about 2.5 amps an hour. So you're kind of at a wash a lot of times on power. So there's a couple different ways to generate power. One is shore power, one is solar panels, and one is a generator, right? Shore power, of course, is when you connect to a plug, and that goes from the plug to your converter that charges your batteries. Now, everything in your RV is designed to run off of a battery. Every light, every switch, every control panel, every thermostat, everything runs off the batteries. Everything else is an assist. Okay, so the power is assisting the batteries. Okay, you also have two different types of power in your RV. You have AC power and DC power. The way I like to describe this is AC power is what runs your AC. It's also what runs your AC outlets in your RV. DC power is kind of like a Duracell. Okay, Duracell's a battery, right? So DC power, which is the 12-volt power, AC power is the 120 volts, that's a plug-in power. DC power is your batteries, right? And that is the main heartbeat of your RV. Okay, so when you plug into shore power, it's actually just turning your converter into a battery charger. All right, so you're taking AC power, plug-in power, turning it into battery power. Okay, so that's what tops off your batteries. When you do that with a generator, it's the same principle. You're taking AC power, plugging that in, turning your converter into a battery charger, and then topping off your batteries, right? Now, whenever we talk about charging from a standpoint of batteries, each battery has a different set amount that you have to charge them in order to be topped off, right? So it's bulk, bulk charging, float charging, and so there's different stages, right? So lithium batteries require about 4 hours of charging to be topped off completely, all right? And then AGM and lead acid batteries, they also have like difference, but it's around the 3 to 3.5 hour mark, right? And if you're like me and you boondock somewhere or you're out camping somewhere, you don't really want to run your generator for 3 hours because you think it's loud and it's going to annoy people and all that stuff, right? But you're really not topping off your batteries unless you run it for an extended period of time. So just remember, about 3 to 4 hours is what you need to use to top off your batteries completely. Okay, so going back to solar, this is the other option that you can utilize to top off your batteries, to charge your batteries, right? However, solar is a little tricky because at a 45-degree angle, the solar panel, like they're normally mounted on the ground, gets about 6 hours worth of sun, 5 to 6 hours, depending if it's winter or summer, right? When we lay that flat, we cut that in half. Now they're only getting 3 hours of sun, okay? So say a 100-watt panel at a 45-degree angle is going to produce about 5 amps an hour, okay? You lay that flat, you've cut that in half, you're going to get about 2.5 amps an hour, right? Like I said, your refrigerator is probably pulling about 2.5 amps if it's on propane. If it is a 12 volt, it's way up there in like the 15s. And if it has a night mode, it only goes down to probably about 7 or 8, somewhere in there. So you have to really look at your data plates, the little stickers inside the fridge or inside the side of the microwave or on the front end of your furnace or wherever it is where you find the data plate. It's going to tell you the draw that it uses, okay? So that's why you see people with massive amounts of solar panels covering their whole roof, because they're trying to get as much power in so that they can keep their batteries. And they usually have a pretty substantial battery bank too, probably 4 to 6 batteries, depending on the size of the battery, right? So if you think about it, every single light in your RV uses 3 amps, okay? So if it uses 3 amps an hour for me to have this light on, and I'm only pulling in 2.5 an hour, I'm at a deficit already. So you see how you're kind of nickel and diming yourself into a battery deficit. There is another way that you can also charge your battery if you have a towable or drivable. If you have a towable of some nature, travel trailer, fifth wheel, or whatever, you can actually plug in the 7-pin to your tow vehicle and turn on your tow vehicle while you're driving. That does create a charge that goes back into your batteries, right? If you have a drivable, Class A, Class B, or Class C, then you turn on the engine, and that from that alternator, from your battery, from your alternator and your engine, it's going to come back into your house battery compartment, right? So there's a couple of different ways that you can get around this, but the main thing is power consumption. How much are you using? And we have all lived in houses, and we're used to houses. You come in, you flip on a light, you go to the next room, you flip on that light, you turn on, something that's plugged in, you turn on a fan, you turn, your air conditioner's going. It's just power, 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 right? And we don't really think about a limitation on that power because we've come from houses, right? So RVs are way different. There's a cap. There's a cap on power, and you have to really think about how you're using the power. So a lot of times you see people have like fairy lights up, or I have battery operated candles in mine. So if I have just ambient lighting, I don't need this lighting that's going to drain my battery, right? I can utilize other things that are going to assist me, but not interfere with my battery usage and draining my batteries, right? So, it's a kind of a dance, a little bit, if you will, that you have to kind of play with power. It's also a dance like when you are using like your microwave and your AC. If you have a 30 amp rig, there's kind of a dance there because you only have 30 amps to play with. So if you use your microwave, which is taking 10, and your AC is taking 20, you maxing out your 30, you're probably going to trip your breaker, right? So you have to turn one off to turn the other one on. And so we kind of find this wiggle pattern that we constantly have to do. So I really kind of would like to tell you guys and take it upon yourselves to, have a little bit of a homework, and to see how much you're actually using. When you come in, how many lights do you have on? Do you turn on the main light that turns on like a whole row of puck lights above you? If so, that's 3, 6, 9, and you just keep on going because it's going to continue to build up, right? Do you leave those on? And then do you go through and utilize something else? And do you have, AC on? And do you have a coffee maker going? And do you have like all these things going on? So you kind of have to really look at your power consumption and say, wow, I am using way more than what I'm putting in. Now, if you are plugged in somewhere, you have a constant supply of power, right? But if you're on the road, you don't have a constant supply of power. And that's where your tow vehicle, your alternator from your drivable, or a generator or solar panels is going to help assist with that. Now, if you don't want to do any solar panels and you don't really want a generator, you have a smaller RV, you can do a trickle charger, and it's a very small, maybe solar panel. You can get those at Harbor Freight, and you can just hook that directly up. And usually they have a solar controller with it so that it controls the amount that's going into the batteries. And that's just a little part on the back of the solar panel itself. And you can hook that directly up to your batteries and just kind of set it up and just let the sun continue to trickle in. That's what it's named for. Trickle in the power so that you can just kind of keep your batteries topped off. This is a great thing to do, especially like if you're out somewhere, like if you go out hiking, or if you go out walking your dog, or you go, out on the paddleboard or something, and you have nothing going on inside except for your refrigerator, which runs 24/7, right? But you have no lights on, you have nothing else going, you have no power consumption really, except for the fridge. Then this trickle charger will actually start to make a little bit of a dent in your battery and increase it ever so slightly. It's very, very small. So the best ways to get it up are going to be to drive or to turn on your vehicle, to a generator, or ample solar, or shore power. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and show you this one more time so that you guys can take note of this. This is how you would hook up your batteries. If you have 12 volt, which with most of us do, then we're going to hook them up and in a parallel. So that you have the same voltage, and then you double your amp hours. Okay. If you're going to do series, then you're going to go positive to negative. Okay. You're more than free to ask me. You can email me, and anybody who didn't get a question answered today, I will go ahead and answer that next week. I think we'll probably continue on with batteries, or if there's another question that you would like to know, feel free to ask, and I will put it into the pile and I will draw from that and we will get your questions answered. Thank you guys so much. See you next week.